They told you it's about saving the planet. They told you it's about your grandchildren. They told you the science is settled, and anyone who questions it is a denier. But what if I told you that the biggest wealth transfer in human history is happening right now, and it has nothing to do with carbon dioxide? Climate policy was never designed to change the weather. It was designed to change who controls the economy, who controls your mobility, who controls what you eat, where you live, and how you spend your money. The same institutions that crashed the global economy in 2008, that printed trillions during COVID, that told you inflation was transitory. They now want you to trust them with redesigning civilization itself. Follow the money always, because when you do, the picture becomes terrifyingly clear. This isn't environmentalism. This is the greatest power grab in modern history, and you're paying for it. The official story. Let's start with what they want you to believe. The narrative is simple. Human activity produces carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide traps heat, and if we don't act now, the planet will become uninhabitable. Scientists agree. The debate is over. Anyone who questions this is either ignorant or paid by oil companies. Sounds reasonable, right? But here's what they don't tell you. The same institutions pushing this narrative, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, central banks, and multinational corporations, have been planning a complete restructuring of the global economy for decades. They call it the Great Reset. They call it sustainable development. They call it ESG investing. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's their own promotional material from 2016. The question isn't whether climate change is real. The question is, why are the solutions always the same? More government control, more international agreements, more restrictions on individual freedom, and who benefits? But this raises an even bigger question. Who benefits? Follow the money. It's the oldest rule in understanding power, so let's follow it. The global green energy market is projected to reach $12 trillion by 2030. 12 trillion. Who's investing? BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager with 10 trillion in assets, has made ESG its core strategy. They're not doing this because they love polar bears. They're doing this because they've positioned themselves to profit from every policy change. The same people writing the rules are betting on the outcomes. Carbon credits have created a new financial instrument worth hundreds of billions. Who trades them? Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the usual suspects. Meanwhile, small businesses get crushed by regulations they can't afford to comply with. Family farms get pushed out by industrial operations that can absorb the costs. If you're starting to see the pattern, hit like and subscribe to keep exposing what they hide, because what comes next connects all the dots. The billionaires flying private jets to climate conferences aren't hypocrites. They are investors, and they are investing in your compliance. Speaking of compliance, the control grid. Here's where it gets interesting. Every climate solution being proposed just happens to increase surveillance and control over your daily life. Carbon footprint tracking. That requires monitoring every purchase you make, every trip you take, every meal you eat. Digital currency. Central banks worldwide are developing CBDC, central bank digital currencies, that can be programmed to restrict what you buy. Your money, their rules. Imagine a world where your bank account knows your carbon score, where your car won't start if you've exceeded your travel allowance, where your credit card declines because you've bought too much meat this month. Think that's science fiction. The Bank of England has already admitted CBDC could be programmed to prevent certain purchases. China's social credit system already restricts travel for low scorers. Coincidence? 15-minute cities, smart meters, digital ID, electric vehicles with remote kill switches. Every innovation just happens to give authorities more control over your movement and consumption. The climate is the justification. Control is the goal. But how did we get here? The playbook. This isn't new. The playbook is ancient. Create a crisis, real or perceived, and use fear to justify expanding power. The Romans did it with barbarian invasions. The medieval church did it with hellfire. Modern governments did it with communism, terrorism, and now climate. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins. Remember COVID? 2 weeks to flatten the curve became 2 years of lockdowns, vaccine passports, and unprecedented government control. And what did they learn? They learned that fear works. They learned that people will surrender freedom for safety, even imaginary safety. Climate change is the perfect forever crisis. It can never be solved because the goalposts can always move. Too hot, climate change. Too cold, climate change. Floods, climate change. Droughts, climate change. Every weather event becomes evidence. Every solution requires more control, and anyone who questions it is labeled a denier, the modern equivalent of heretic. But the real pattern is darker still. Wealth transfer. Let's talk about what's actually happening to your money. Carbon taxes, green levies, renewable energy surcharges. In Germany, electricity prices have tripled since they started their energy transition. In the UK, a quarter of households are in fuel poverty. The people who can least afford it are paying the most. The poor subsidize the rich in the name of saving the planet. When you pay extra for gas, that money flows upward. When your electricity bill spikes, that money flows upward. When regulations kill jobs in manufacturing and mining, those communities collapse, but the consultants and compliance officers thrive. You pay, they profit. Meanwhile, the wealthy buy carbon offsets and keep flying private. They invest in the green companies their policies make profitable. They buy beachfront property while telling you the oceans are rising. John Kerry has a private jet, a yacht, and multiple mansions, but he's lecturing you about your carbon footprint. This isn't hypocrisy. This is hierarchy, and it's about to get worse. Energy reality. Here's the part they hope you never understand. Renewable energy cannot currently replace fossil fuels, not because the technology is bad, but because of physics. Solar panels don't work at night. Wind turbines don't work when it's calm. And we don't have battery technology that can store grid-scale energy efficiently. Germany shut down its nuclear plants for ideological reasons, and now burns more coal than ever while importing natural gas. California has rolling blackouts during heat waves despite, or because of, its aggressive green policies. The grid is becoming less reliable as it becomes more green. But here's the real question. Do they not know this, or do they not care? Because energy scarcity means control. If there's not enough electricity for everyone, someone has to decide who gets it. Rationing requires authority. Blackouts create dependency. Cheap, abundant energy is the foundation of freedom. That's why they are attacking it. An energy-poor population is a controllable population. And that brings us to the global game. The global game. While the West dismantles its industrial capacity in the name of climate, China is building coal plants at a record pace. In 2023 alone, China approved more coal power than the entire existing capacity of the UK. India is expanding too. Africa is being told to skip industrialization entirely to stay poor for the planet. Climate change is not the problem. Poverty is the problem. But Western climate activists don't seem to mind. They're too busy blocking traffic in London to notice that their policies are transferring manufacturing and power to nations that don't share their values. West shrinks, East rises. This is economic suicide disguised as virtue, and it's deliberate. The architects of this policy aren't stupid. They know China won't comply. They know Africa needs energy. They know deindustrialization weakens nations. So why push it anyway? Control. A weak West is easier to manage. A dependent West is easier to rule. And a guilty West won't fight back. But what about the science itself? Silence science. The science is settled, they say. 97% of scientists agree, but that statistic is a lie. The original study that produced it counted any paper that mentioned human influence on climate, even papers skeptical of catastrophic warming, as agreeing with the consensus. Thousands of scientists have signed declarations questioning the narrative. Nobel laureates, atmospheric physicists, climatologists with decades of experience. But you never hear about them, Because they are systematically silenced. Journals refuse to publish their work. Universities deny them funding. Media labels them deniers without engaging their arguments. Science requires debate, but debate has been forbidden. The IPCC, the UN body that sets the narrative, is a political organization, not a scientific one. Its summaries are written by government appointees, not the scientists who wrote the underlying reports. Scientists have repeatedly complained that their conclusions were misrepresented. It's not science if you can't question it. But questioning is forbidden. Dissent is career suicide, and that tells you everything you need to know. Real science welcomes scrutiny. Propaganda demands obedience. And there's one more piece to this puzzle: the food attack. They're coming for your food. In the Netherlands, the government is forcing farmers to reduce livestock by 30%, destroying family farms that have existed for generations. In Ireland, they're culling cattle. In the US, they're pushing lab-grown meat and insect protein. Eat the bugs, peasant. Bill Gates, the largest private farmland owner in America, is investing heavily in synthetic food. The same Bill Gates who lectures the world about climate while owning a private jet, a superyacht, and multiple mansions. This isn't about emissions. Cows have existed for thousands of years without destroying the planet. This is about controlling the food supply. Whoever controls food controls populations. History is clear on this. Stalin used famine as a weapon in Ukraine. Mao's policies killed tens of millions. Food security is national security. When your food comes from a factory owned by a billionaire instead of a farm owned by your neighbor, you are at their mercy. And mercy is not their strong suit. But here's what they fear most: the awakening. They thought they could do this quietly. They thought the frog wouldn't notice the water heating up. They were wrong. Dutch farmers rose up and shook their government. Canadian truckers showed what peaceful resistance looks like. Citizens across Europe are rejecting green policies that impoverish them. The pushback is growing faster than they anticipated. This is why they're accelerating, why they're desperate, why the rhetoric is getting more extreme. They need to lock in control before enough people wake up. Time is running out, but here's what they don't understand. You can't control people who refuse to comply. You can't silence truth forever. And you can't build a new world order on a foundation of lies. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. The revolution is information. The weapon is awareness. And right now, you're holding it. They want you afraid. They want you guilty. They want you compliant, but you don't have to be. So what's the truth about climate policy? Power. It's always about power. The power to control what you drive, what you eat, where you live, how you heat your home, and how you spend your money. The same institutions that profit from war, that crash the economy, that locked you in your home, they want you to trust them with saving the planet. Follow the money always. They use fear because fear works. They silence dissent because debate exposes them. They accelerate because time is against them. But here's what they forgot. Throughout history, every system built on lies eventually collapses under its own weight. The further a society drifts from truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. You now see the pattern. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you comply, or will you question? Will you consume what they feed you, or will you dig deeper? If you made it this far, comment carbon control to prove you see through the narrative now. Every government lies. The question is, what are they lying about? The truth is out there. You just have to follow the money. Subscribe if you want to keep digging.